town forum thing. And I'm like, I had no idea. So me not knowing that, and now the gardening club, this might be the forum where interesting ideas come to the surface, and it might not even be a town issue. It might be that some group goes off and does it, but the conversation could start here.
Just to be clear, you're monopolizing the conversation.
Well, she said I could. She's the only other one here.
One point of clarification on the public comment period. The public comment period, the first public comment period of every board meeting we talked about at one time having the first public comment period be only related to what's on the agenda for that board meeting.
I think it still says that in the stuff that's printed.
We've kind of, we've scrapped it.
Okay, all right.
I think, correct me also if I'm wrong, the idea here was we would try this for a while.
Right.
And if, at the end of that while, whatever that is, we just simply get no participation, or if you're the only one that shows up, we'll be here for you. I'm being a bit facetious, but if we generate no interest, then I think we'd relook at whether or not we would do it.
Or like you said, your suggestion, instead of doing 5:30 to 6, open up at 6 for 15 minutes, and then maybe some people will be there. But then if people came thinking we're going to do a business meeting at 6, then they have to wait through public comments that maybe they don't want to participate.
I think it's a balance between that and y'all coming at 5:30, not knowing whether it was going to be me, and I've already said my thing, or it's going to be 20 people.
But I also think that last time we spent the whole third, I don't know that we would have necessarily, but Christine Voss was the one that was here. And I don't think there was anybody else.
That was it.
So since either she had us captive or we had her captive, we just continued the discussion. But I don't think it was non-substantive for the 30 minutes. I think it was worthwhile.
Ken Jones vegetable garden.
Yeah, we had.
Can you grow cupcakes in that?
It was a good idea. The problem is the space over here is toxic.
Somebody showed me that one time. I'm like, what is this, for guinea pigs? And they're like, no, it was a vegetable garden at one time. I'm like, there's not.
I don't think it was ever, but
I think
that's where they dumped the spoils from the canals at one point.
When we years ago, when you came down, when you went north on Final Boulevard and looked at that area behind the boulders, kind of, there were mounds of fill. Maybe it's the most horrible stuff on the island. I don't know, but it was fill. But under that, as far as I know, it's natural.
We looked at putting a playing field or something in there one time, didn't we?
Let's begin this point.
McGinnis Point.
Yeah.
We can do it.
Was talking about
field or something.
McGinnis Point. He was talking about that.
I guess my take on it, and you may view this differently, or you may think I have a different storyline here. If we're going to name things, this is nothing against Kent, but if we're going to name things after mayors, there may be some other mayors we want to name stuff after as well, unless we already have them designated. Why not the Joan Lamson?
I thought it was just mayors who died. No, I'm really serious.
Oh, well, I think you can do that so many times.
We don't have any bars in town, so you can't name anything after me.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, if you want to make it a community vegetable garden, sure. I don't know why we have to name it after somebody.
When actually, I don't care what it's called. A garden club said Kent was a big proponent of that, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that, but I certainly studied urban gardening.
Well, it's certainly dedicated
urban gardening.
Hello, Larry.
Hi there.
You said we should all invite somebody to come. I invited Larry.
No, I invited Larry.
Hey, guys.
I think generally you have to be careful about naming things, bridges or anything else, because you run out. And then,
We start looking like a memorial park.
well, I mean, just in general, so I think that takes on a role and you gotta be a little bit careful about. The other thing I would suggest, and Charlie, I don't know. I would think that out here on the left, that used to be the public notice bulletin board, and it's not anymore. What's happened to that?
I can do a better job with that. I've been putting them out on the email list, which I think meets our public notice requirements and it reaches more people.
But casually it doesn't. I mean, it's only if you go to it, and if people come in here to do business. I mean, I think the General Assembly law says the clerk's office and/or email list or website if you have one. But customarily, public notices always were, not just here, but generally, were at town hall, some public board. And it used to be in the newspaper and so forth. I realize there's some lobbying efforts and so forth lost with the pandemic. But if a person's casually coming in to pay their taxes, whatever, the only thing they see is a very neat bulletin board, but it's not efficient, and it's for goings on in town, not public meeting notices. I mean, when you came in on the right-hand side, that used to be a public meeting notice. And now there isn't any place. So if you don't happen to be connected, on your phone guru or with your email, you're out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I
It used to be in the
would
library.
say-
I think the library is the second source, but.
yeah, so I think probably that could easily be taken care of somewhere down the road. If we have the administrative assistant replacement, and I can task with that. I think when I first started here, that whole front person to take care of that vestibule area.
But no one goes notices it.
I know, they come from him, but it's all, we're all in the same place. But,
Him and the
you
planner,
also have,
him and the planner, HRO.
oh, yeah.
But according to the general statutes, it's the town clerk. I don't mean by person, I mean by office.
Right. I mean, he puts out meeting notices, public notices to the sunshine list and all of that, whatever is legally required. But I'm saying if it's just a communication thing of putting it on the board out there, that,
I guess it seems to me though, it should be more than that, because customarily, any place I've ever been, town hall had a public meeting notice board. And that met the statute. The statute's pretty much the same at what state you go to.
yeah, I just think,
And North Carolina.
you have to be coming through the front door to see it.
What?
I mean, I think what Charlie's saying is he's reaching a whole lot more of an audience, not saying that we shouldn't do the board. I'm saying absolutely we can do the board, but I'm saying that's going to be only a handful of people coming through that front door, and then they would have to be coming through at the right time to catch a meeting notice.
But that's not the statute part. The statute part says you shall have it in a particular place. Every town shall have it in a particular place. And on the web, the requirement, and on the website, if you have one, up to date. The rest of it's all extra.
But I think that, I acknowledge your point, but I think we should do something for that handful of people.
Yeah, no, I'm saying I have no problem doing it. I'm just saying that, that we're doing that part, but yes.
I recognize that. It's not one place, see what I'm saying?
Right. We also, and it needs to be like, okay,
I'd like-
don't put any business cards over here. This is like an official area of,
So the whole 2-day thing, at some point it's a test that this notice was posted on a certain day, so it met the 2 days.
oh, sure.
And that's under statutory. And it got
Thank
buttoned
you.
up with COVID, no doubt.
I got to take
Thank you,
off.
Suzanne. Do you have any?
I just wanted to say that I appreciate the 5:30 option. And however it moves forward, I support it.
You're leaving early?
I got pickleball.
Oh, priorities.
Where's your loyalty?
Yeah.
It must be a slow news day.
Yeah.
Are y'all gonna stay there when you have your regular meeting at 6?
Yeah.
We are.
So I'm gonna get right there and shoot
Okay.
whatever y'all talking about, all right?
Cool.
Thanks for having us.
What, did you catch us on Facebook last week?
Well, we actually, our editor said we're going to be talking about beach access today. We got here and the mayor said that you all were talking about the budget, so the story's going to be about the.
Well, no, we're gonna.
It won't be particularly satisfying this year.
That's right, it won't be.
We're gonna mention public beach access as part of the budget.
Absolutely.
So I'll hand that up a little bit.
Replacement of beach access, eh?
Yeah, I put out an all hands last, kind of following up what we were talking about on the 13th. I put out an all hands for this meeting.
Right.
And if you want to get the news guys here, put out a good Facebook post, because I think you guys cruise Facebook
Yeah.
looking for juicy things.
Every day.
So you
I
put
always-
something about beach access, is that what, you put something about beach access?
Well, I put something about this meeting.
Oh,
I
yeah.
said we're going to talk about we have a tax
Right.
for that. And but if the police chief, pisses me off, I say something about coyotes. And if the fire chief pisses me off, I say something about sharks.
There's a quote.
And you guys are here for sharks and coyotes.
Both sharks and coyotes are the same.
You called me, you wanted to come by here one time. I think you called me at 11:30 and said you were coming at 1. And we couldn't get together that day.
Very hot.
Yeah, it was, you said you're on your way down. You're from Greenville or
No, Jacksonville.
Jacksonville?
I remember that actually. I was like, oh.
Sorry, it just didn't work out.
We'll be entertaining anyway.
My niece, we got a chance to walk. No evidence, University of Georgia, just,
He'll go to a right angle, don't worry.
I thought Suzanne was there.
she didn't, she didn't,
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if they gave her an offer, but she's going to.
Saw that and left.
Well, I have to tell you, that's a much better market in terms of, it starts at 200 and then the lower the number. the better.
Tell me.
Okay, so she did good.
Tell me about that.
Trying, this could almost their picture Wednesday.
Come on. Yeah. Do some stills off of it.
I'm gonna catch holy hell from my peers. What, the TV had a water fund budget here?
That's how important this town is.
The beaches are full already though. This past day, the parking lots were full.
I do want to ask, since I know that they're seeing this in Big Beach since like COVID, there's not really a beach season anymore. People are just coming at any time that that comes in.
Especially this year where the weather stayed decent all winter.
Yeah, like for the county as a whole, the occupancy tax revenues have been setting records for, like maybe 20 months in a row now. I mean, way up over previous years. It started in the middle of 2020, after the first few months of COVID shutdown, and every month since then, the occupancy tax revenues have been super high.
John, I got a question on the beach meeting the other day. Good. I saw an article in the paper that
Assignments
already.
And normally guys like that for weeks, don't work.
We have some new ones.
Yeah, I mean, the offshore disposal site is a municipal site.
Right.
If you have any comments about where it is, they dump some on there. Lately, they've been pushing it with take the channel closer to the end of the channel. They're building berms.
They'll be
And
jumping
then,
all over.
and if
Yeah, tell them I'll give her a call.
Dredge to go in there,
So that
can't take and use
to
And then they're dumping some off.
Please do.
I will,
Please
thank you
do.
so much.
With the literal drift, that just fills up the ditch again.
That's what they do. They've been doing for 50 years.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah,
Yeah, makes sense.
Have a problem with 50 years, you do the same.
Were you here when they were gonna sue the car for that?
We'll try.
But there's, people always wonder, what do you mean? We've got this whole ocean full of sand out there. But, well, what's interesting is that they mapped, when, during the last glacial cycle, when sea level was much lower because everything was in the ice cubes on land. All the rivers like White Oak River, North River, and all those had channels that went right up to the edge of the continental shelf. And then at the end of the glacial period, when sea levels rose again, those channels, which were cut through what is now the continental shelf, filled up with sand. And it's that material that we're looking at primarily.
If you guys come back.
The sources of sand. It's interesting from a geology point of view.
It is.
Heading up to Jersey next week for National Beach Organization.
Oh, yeah.
She called me today.
For some conference, I mean, he's setting up.
2 this morning, like, that's.
As sales rep.
Does he not use no job? I see him fairly often.
I think he's trying.
I think she told her, right,
That's
cut it, get the rest of
intellectually
it, straight
appropriate
across.
for him,
That way there's an even,
Get more money.
Oh, yeah, get a little bit of that too.
You could suffer through non-intellectual things for a lot more money.
Yeah, he and I talked to him a little while ago, and he said he's got a whole lot of new toys in his computer.
I bet what he misses, I don't know this for a fact, but I bet what he misses is kind of like the teaching aspect of his job. I mean, he talked to groups from boards to school groups to,
Yeah.
he was really good at it.
Over the years, he made so many friends now.
Yeah. And 20 years.
Did you see the new, what is it, what's the coastal organization? Spencer Rogers?
Cigarette.
Seagrant, yeah. They have an article about Spencer Rogers.
Did he retire?
He's probably getting close, but they had a real nice article about him, pictures of him when he first started off in the 70s. So he's been around for a long
His
time.
mustache was on short one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's helpful. He's helpful. He was banging the drum on the flood insurance increases long before anyone.
Well, that's why those maps haven't come out yet, because they went back to the drawing board as a result of that. He was on the CRAC and, the CRAC really got into that.
When the governments really get serious on that, there's gonna be some upset people, I think.
Well, this new Zebra thing that we talked about after the beach meeting. Yeah, we're trying to figure out if how much momentum there is building behind this retreat exercise, retreat option, retreat from the coast. I mean, I think it's going to be 2 people moving backwards and 100 moving forward, but I don't know.
That makes sense, John.
Well, Larry, you're the only member of the public here. Do you have anything you want to raise?
I saw the Fox people outside and I came home very hungry.
Just don't open that closet.
You said this is what they should be talking about in there?
Good, Larry.
Yeah, here's some questions you might want to.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Larry, that's all on camera.
That's good. I missed, I didn't get here quite at 5:30. Did the lady that was here earlier have any questions or suggestions for the town? Not really. Okay.
Well, no, she was just voicing, so it was Suzanne Wheatcraft. She was just voicing support for the 5:30 open forum.
Oh, okay.
She made a suggestion that instead of starting at 5:30, maybe we start the regular meeting at 6 and go 15 minutes for an open forum.
If there's anybody here,
Yeah,
Might be a better idea.
that makes some sense.
I don't mind 5:30.
Yeah, I mean, when things pop up, 30 minutes won't be enough time.
Yeah.
True.
You end up changing the time.
It
We
was bring
start at
pizzas, but
6,
then
we
we
need
get
to
more
knock
people.
15 minutes off of your meeting.
Yeah.
So it'll cut back to 30 minutes instead of 45. Right?
No,
Yes.
I don't count questions from commissioners. It's just me talking. Actually, this is a good point. It's a good time to bring this up. So who was on, Kevin was on webinar last time. And he was saying he can't hear Julie, Neil, and I over there. Charlie's going to get one of the microphones set up over there. But he was also saying sometimes you couldn't hear the speaker, me or whoever else from the podium's here. And then sometimes you couldn't hear you guys when we did the talk about Charlie. Not only is he taking minutes, running all that audio visual, he's synchronizing mics off, on. And that would be solved if we, myself included, could be disciplined to only speak when you recognize them, you know?
Good luck with that ever
Well,
happening.
I mean, it's generally, we can get back to raising hands and you recognize Commissioner
That
so.
stifles arguments or
Or
discussions.
if you have microphones in front of everybody with push buttons.
That's good.
They're off
I think those do have push buttons.
until, yes.
They stay on until you push it off.
Yeah, but I mean, if everybody had theirs off until they're recognized to speak and then you push on, I mean, it's the way all the international meetings are run with interpretation because the interpreters need to hear one by one.
Well, yeah, I think people are here to stay with online. I think people, I mean, Brad Rich, I don't think, I was just talking to Emerald Isle, but Brad Rich doesn't go to their meetings either anymore. I mean, they've
But we've not done anything yet. I mean, how can we say that unless people are just going to get lazy and not go?
I just think, Clark, there's just a large segment of people who'd rather who would attend online.
That's not part of public. I mean, you can't, I'm sorry, but you can't tell what's really going on unless you're at the meeting. You can't.
No, but
I don't care if it's an international meeting, it's not, I mean, it's not, I'm not going to say it.
We can't make them come though, is what it.
They don't have to come.
We can't- No, right, so that's the point.
But suggesting that it's a thing is just inaccurate.
no, I'm just looking at ways to improve for those who, I mean, with 3/4 of our population being second homeowners, they'd hear us better if we could, I didn't know we had to push to talk. Maybe that's the solution.
Push to not talk.
Push to not talk.
I mean, it's so, the same as work from home, you
Well,
know.
I understand that, but
Sorry, how much,
I mean, every company's going to close all their offices? I don't believe so. And this is settled.
how much control do you have on volume
CU's, but
going out?
headquarters.
Because yesterday I was having trouble and I usually
No.
don't.
And Maryland,
The same setting on my computer.
I just,
they're going to have a much smaller.
Not too much. Another fact I can make on that,
It was too quiet.
I think there are
even from
organizations that could do that.
Rick's presentation. Yeah, I'll take a look at that.
Like where we're sitting right now, are these the microphones?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I think we're
Time.
on time, so I'd like to call this the second regular monthly meeting of the Pine Hill Shores Board of Commissioners to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Charlie, how many people do we have online?
One, Brad Rich.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Brad. Good evening. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any suggestions or changes they would like to make to the agenda? If not, I'll leave it.
Motion to approve as published.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
If I may, we should have on here the resolution approval. I have a redo on the resolution.
Right.
Oh, right.
So if I could suggest item 7B, Roman numeral 7B, resolution, that's for the grant, just some word changes.
I sent you, Brian, I sent you the updated agenda with that.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's on there.
We have two agendas now. So. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Based on the agenda we just approved, does anybody have any disclosures or conflicts of interest they would like to alert us to at this point?
I use water.
Use water, okay.
You really?
Well, you'll have,
Part of the water rates, I just want.
you'll have to abstain from taking a bath until we get the budget passed.
Right.
Okay,
Oh, just,
None.
none? Okay, no disclosures or conflicts of interest. Okay, next item on the agenda are the announcements. May 11th will be our next and first regular monthly meeting of the Board of Commissioners. May 14th, we have the Kayak for the Warriors Gala and Silent Auction event at the Doubletree. And May 7th, I believe, is the last day that you can register to attend that particular event. And all events can be, you can sign up for all events online at www.k4tw.org. So please, if you haven't signed up yet, go to the website and do so. Then on May 20th, we have the Kayak for the Warriors Golf Tournament here at the Country Club of the Crystal Cove. Does anybody have any other announcements they would like to make?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is their
John,
first public comment.
Saturday is the Police's Fire hot dog cookout from 11 to 3.
Okay, yeah, this Saturday, April 30th,
30th.
there will be a cookout at the Public Safety Building from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And this is an opportunity to meet our firemen and policemen community event. Okay, Charlie, do we have any public comments?
Yes, sir.
Anybody here? No. Okay, the next item is our consent agenda. And again, I think there were two versions of the March 9th meeting minutes that were circulated. So does anybody have, what we'll do is we'll go through each consent agenda item and then we'll vote once on approving the consent agenda with any amendments that we might make. Does anybody have any changes, additions or deletions they'd like to make to the March 9 minutes that have been presented? Done? Okay. Moving on, the next thing is the Arbor Day Proclamation. And on this, I'd just like to say that we did have an Arbor Day celebration in Pine Hill Shores on March 18th, which is the first Friday after March 15th, which is the day that North Carolina normally celebrates Arbor Day. But Charlie tells me that every year we have to reapply to be reinstated as a tree city. And as part of that reinstatement process to be a tree city, every year we send in an Arbor Day proclamation that we make on National Arbor Day. So that's the reason we're doing this particular proclamation right here. And you have in front of you an Arbor Day proclamation with some changes suggested by Commissioner Cox to try and make the proclamation a little more Pine Hill Shore specific. And so the changes Commissioner Cox made are in red, and I think they're all perfectly fine. The ones in the big paragraph here were just changes to the verb tenses to make everything grammatically correct after making the one change. So there's really very little of substance there. But does anybody have any comments or questions on this particular proclamation?
No, I think his changes were well done.
Okay, excellent. Okay, those are the only two items on the consent agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. The next item on our agenda is unfinished business. And the first item under that is the NCDEQ grant resolution. And I'll turn it over to Town Manager Brian Kramer, please.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't have my copy in front of me. Here. But, so I apologize. This was a boilerplate. Thank you. This was a boilerplate resolution provided by NCDOQ for the grant we're going to submit on Monday. I have a draft copy. Each grant package is 188 pages long, so it's pretty extensive. But in short, the person who reviewed our grant application recommended changes all to the whereases, and in short, we needed in the first whereas to make it very clear that we're talking about construction of water treatment works, and in the second whereas, he wanted more specification on the project itself. So we ran this language past them where we actually described the linear feet for both the replacement and expansion portions, and specifically brought out the replacement of one of the water towers. Otherwise, everything below the three whereas is what you approved 2 weeks ago.
Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I just have a question. If I don't have any questions with the adaptation, so I suppose I can ask the question after.
Oh, sure.
Just time.
No,
You want to do it now? Okay. Just time, if we got a grant for everything, is it any requirements as far as timing when it has to be done? Is it within 5 years, within 2 years, or do you have to go by the schedule?
So we put it on our CIP over 3 years, but it has to be, the funds have to be expended, is it December 24 or December 26?
20.
Yeah, okay, we've got a question. And I don't expect that all of it will be funded in the first round, and we'll probably end up massaging the out years in the CIP either this July or here in this initial grant application. And then again, when there's another fall funding round, which there may or may not be funds for our category at that time.
I was just concerned this might dictate some other things about the budget, that's all.
Oh, it will unquestionably impact, and I'm going to discuss that
Well,
when
no, I didn't mean impact so much as having to do it all within the first year or something. That would
Yeah, no, we won't have to do it all.
significantly negatively impact, that's all.
We'll not.
I just didn't want to put ourselves in straight job, that's all.
Okay, are there any other questions about the minor changes to the grant resolution? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the grant resolution as amended.
So moved.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, all those, aye? It's unanimous. Acorn Court budget update. I think we have a quick presentation by our town clerk, Charlie Rush. Please.
Would you prefer I go up there?
You could talk from there and Everybody can hear you, it's fine.
I just wanted to update you all on a change order that's about to happen with the Acorn Court project. Asphalt paving was supposed to begin this week, but some neighbors were concerned last week with some chalk that was drew pretty high up their driveway. And looking back, there was some elevation that wasn't accounted for in the survey. So engineers went out and remade the plan. So instead of paving over the existing asphalt, they're going to remove that and then pave new asphalt with new foundation that's going to funnel towards the center of the cul-de-sac. That change is going to be $13,000 on top of the total. And luckily, there won't be a budget amendment necessary for this change because we have Powell bill money left over from this fiscal year, which was allocated for projects for Sunny, but grants have been able to cover that expense. So hopefully we'll be able to get paving started Monday of next week and finish it by Friday next week.
Does this include making sure that out of Walnut Court, that water is blocked from coming down Acorn?
We've discussed with the engineers about creating sort of a wall off on the end of the street there, yeah. So that's something that they can do in the asphalting when they go up the road.
By just raising the asphalt out at Walnut?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure that we didn't do this whole project and still have all the water coming down Walnut and going down Acorn, so.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, Charlie. We don't need to make any formal.
No board action.
Okay.
Just an update.
Thank you, Charlie.
All right. Okay, we're up to agenda item 8, which is the, I think the meat on the bones of our meeting tonight. And we have 3 things on the agenda: the beach fund, the kayak fund, and the water enterprise fund. And I'd like to turn it over to Town Manager Kramer to
Okay,
the discussion on that.
so I'm going to segment our comments because I think Julie, Sunny, and I will all be talking. I want to very quickly discuss the budget process. Then I will go into our standard line by line on, well, we're going to talk about the budget process. We're going to do the beach and the kayak up front. When we get to the water, we're going to first water fund. We're going to go line by line as we normally do. Then talk about the CIP for the water fund, the capital plan, and then go in discussions on fee adjustments. That's kind of the sequence. But very quickly on the budget process, Charlie, for those online, if you can go to that slide, just very quickly, what's required by state law. I'm named, and Clerk, everyone, you have these slides in front of you. I'm named as the budget officer in general statutes, and I'm required by law to prepare a budget that you approve. I'm required to meet with the department heads no later than 30 April. We routinely start that in February, soon after the offsite we did. I have to prepare and deliver a budget message no later than 1 June. The proposed budget must be posted 10 days prior to the public hearing for the budget. Normally, we do that budget, like that. I'll come to what we do normally in a minute, but I have to propose I have to prepare a budget message, and we have to have the proposed budget posted for 10 days. The board has to have a public hearing on the budget, and you're required to pass a balanced budget no later than 30 June. That's the meat and potatoes of what the state law says. Now flipping over to the second one, second page, our normal budget offsite is at the annual offsite, we establish a schedule for budget planning. And also at the annual offsite, we review a draft capital plan. We did both of those things in February. That schedule Julie sets up then is reprinted by Janie Price, I believe, every month. I meet with Julie and the department heads, department by department, not all at once, late February, March. Of course, in In the second meeting in March, normally we address general fund issues. Second meeting in April, which we're at tonight, we address water, the beach fund. And then normally, and this year, we're doing it at the regular board meetings in March, April, and May, and perhaps in June. We have continued discussion of budget issues on all the funds. Then on the last slide, in late May, I present a budget message to the board, and that's a 3 or 4 page narrative that I'm required to read to you. We then we post both electronically and physically the budget, both here in the library, and I think we added the PSB a few years ago. So on that item, really that means for our schedule, at that 11 May board meeting, my goal is going to try to be to get a consensus from the board, not approval of a budget. That happens in June. Consensus on the board on the various options we've talked about, and so that I can get started on the budget message. In late May, and this is a holdover from Ken's days that we haven't done during COVID, and John, I'll leave it up to you how you want to slice this, but we've done a mayor's brief on the budget. And then at that first board meeting in June, we have the public hearing, and it's been standard course that night after that public hearing, we vote on the proposed budget. If we don't vote on it, then we'll have to have a special meeting again prior to 30 June. So that's generally, just wanted to update everyone on what our plan is.
If I could, so the driver is really 8 June. Is that right?
Yeah,
We have to really kind of back things up from the 8th of June.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, I think quite often we've actually done the final thing in second meeting. I think we have in the second meeting, haven't we?
Second meeting of June.
Yeah, I think we did that once.
Well, I thought we went on than that.
I don't think so. In fact, several years ago, we had a second June meeting, and I don't remember what the subject matter was.
It just means it doesn't have to be the first, I just want to emphasize that, it doesn't have to be the first meeting in June. But something else.
Yeah, but that's what you're planning on at the moment. That's your target, yeah.
But if you have the public hearing, if you call for the public hearing at that first June meeting, that backs you up 10 days from the public hearing, then have to vote.
No, I understand that for that, right.
See, I was thinking like, an opportunity to do the mayor's brief might be actually at the public hearing. If you did the brief and then had the public hearing, then more of the public would be kind of familiar with what we're talking about. But the downside of that is if the public then has major comments or problems with the budget, then if we make changes, do we have to have a second public hearing? If it's large,
You haven't voted on it yet.
you haven't voted on it yet. I don't know if it's large substantive changes. We might need to re-release.
Neil would provide a substantive change.
Substantive change.
Yeah, I would think, well, it makes some sense to do the mayor's brief and the public hearing together. Because
Except you're gonna get the people here. And we get the people here. You don't get the benefit of the news going out.
Your groupies will be here, John.
Yeah, the Beansovey will be here. Well, we'll work that out. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, the driver is the 8th, but again, to repeat, I'm kind of hoping that we could have a very thorough discussion, maybe get a consensus on the 11th of May. And if we have to have some special meetings prior to then, so that I could prepare a budget message going into the 8th. Also, I should point out that it's perfectly fine for the board to give, this is not approving the budget, but it's perfectly fine for the board to consider telling the staff they're okay on any element of the budget, whether it be personnel, equipment,
Right.
any kind of expenditure. So there you have it. All right, I'm going to start on page 8. Page 8 is the roll-up page for our beach funds. And just a reminder that the beach expense reserve fund is sort of our annual operating fund with the, for our beach funds, and the beach capital reserve fund is really,
You have the old package. And the new package, the beach fund starts on page 12 and 13.
Oh, I got
The old one, too.
well, working on it.
well, we could all go to that first page.
Yeah, but the only thing that changes is the numbers, then the page number, then that's operating.
Right. Yeah, that'd be like.
Okay.
So we're all on that first page. So the beach expense reserve fund, annual operating fund of the beach, the capital reserve is our fund to save for the next nourishment page. This is our roll-up page. So we'll go into detail in on following pages. Just the key takeaway, the difference this year is in the beach capital, the beach expense reserve fund. Our transfer to the beach capital reserve is a little smaller than normal, 32,000 this year, real compared to 128 in the current fiscal year, and that's due to 2 beach capital projects, which I'll talk about in a minute. So next page, please. On the beach expense reserve funds, our major revenues here is, of course, the sales and use tax attributable to the PKS sand tax, our parking fees, and this year we have as a revenue into the beach expense reserve fund, public beach access A, our easternmost public beach access, will be replaced this coming fiscal year, and we're going to do that after the summer, obviously. And that access was one of our 5 initial accesses. It's about 20 years old. Not the newer ones that we put in the 2010, 2011 timeframe. We started noticing some deterioration last year, boards and such. Sunny did some repairs last year that we believe were sufficient for safety purposes and all of that. But so $165,000 it will provide for a total replacement of that. It's already been designed by Lee Dixon, Coastal Engineering, and we'll be ready to move on that. But so that's the revenue into the beach expense reserve fund. The expenditures, the salary line addresses paid parking attendance and some small amount of time for Sunny's personnel for beach, normally work on weekends, picking up garbage and such, and normally fertilization of the dunes, the dune vegetation that we do each year. Additional expense is motor vehicle collection. That's to the state, because there is in fact a motor vehicle tax revenue, very small amount here. Beach maintenance, again, normally just fertilizer and miscellaneous repairs to beach access. Sunny did some work on the westernmost access last year. Our lease payments to the various public beach accesses are addressed in the expense, and the capital outlay. The capital outlay is public beach access A that I just spoke about, and also we made the decision last year to install sand fence. We're going to outsource that this time and not have Sunny's department spend their entire winter doing that as we did several years ago. We had to wait until the vegetation from the post-storm beach renourishment project was properly established, and Jim Taylor can make that call, being our local CAMA permitting officer. He's told Charlie that we'll be ready to start that this winter. So normally don't have capital outlay like that here, but we do this time. And then we'll transfer 32,000 over to beach capital reserve.
Are these columns, the last column there, estimated annual 21, 22, shouldn't that be 22, 23?
No, that's the current.
That's current.
Okay.
That's where we think.
Don't you estimate what you're going to have by the end of the, you just haven't collected it all yet?
I don't think your thing printed everything.
Oh, okay. Oh, there's another, I
There's
see.
another column.
There's another column.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, so estimated annual where we'll figure out, and correct, Robert's right. We won't have all of our sales and use tax revenue for the current fiscal year until September. This is a 3-month delay.
But that's an estimate, taking that into account.
The original agenda packet has all the columns. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, I'm on board.
Okay, flipping over to the,
One question. Did you say beach access, the total cost to renovate that is how much? 165?
yes,
Thank you.
and on the beach capital reserve, on the next page, our revenue is the sand tax. I've kept that sand tax, kept the sand tax revenue the same, no changes, referencing our discussions during the general fund brief, so no change to the sand tax. The motor vehicle tax, as mentioned, there's a small amount there, and then that transfer from the beach expense reserve fund comes in as well at 32,000. And then the expense for the capital reserve is Julie putting it in the bank. And will be over $4 million, I believe, this year. So the budget we're talking here, that'll put us at about 4.4, 4.3, 4.4.
Yeah, I can't remember if we were going to be at 4.4 again this year, and then this would put us at 4.7.
I think that's what you had said the last time.
Yeah.
We're at 4.4 now, and it'll go to 4.7.
And that's it on the beach fund, Mayor. So I'll take any questions on it, either in the beach fund before we quickly hit the cut.
Any questions on beach fund?
I have one. Sonny, what's the next beach access that you're going to have a major renovation to? Is it the last one?
We're doing it right now. We're doing a couple stairs and the boards on top, and we're sun-dried baked to death.
But it's not redoing the whole.
No,
It's nothing like this one.
We're just rehabbing it, and it's gonna,
Do you have any other major ones coming up in the next couple of years?
we haven't seen anything bad. We've been inspecting them for the last couple of months.
Just for planning ahead. Thank you.
I would bet, just because of the age, that the clam digger is going to be the next one, because that's, well, I mean, it's one of the 5 originals and it's sun-baked.
It is
The
sun-baked.
Beacon Reach ones are in the shade.
It's holding on.
They're in good shape, but any of the original 5 that are out in the sun continually or
That's less significant than this. Hey, yeah, good.
the clam digger one actually is used a lot because
Yeah.
people go through the hotel to get to the beach, but so.
Okay. Is there any action we have to take? No, we're all in general agreement with what's being proposed.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, moving right along. Kayak for the Warriors.
Okay, pretty simple. One revenue, one expenditure, and hopefully that's a horrible underestimate. But we budget $60,000 based off of what we expect to see
And it's just,
next June.
it's just a pass through.
All the proceeds go to hope the worst.
Right.
Any comments or questions on that one? Okay. That brings us to the Water Enterprise Fund.
Okay, I'm on that first roll-up page 12 in my packet. Hopefully it is in others as well, but This is our roll up for the entire budget. The proposed budget comes in at $1,260,000. Some major points. This time last year, we said a couple things. We'd have to review the fee schedule. At this point we are, and that we'd be starting a ramp up for the start of capital projects. And that was before all the strand activity started. So that's a major difference in on the water side this year. Also, I will recommend some fee increases. And after we get through the normal operational budget, we'll hit that. So I'm going to ask Julie, as she does, to just briefly discuss the revenues.
Okay, so on your customer-based revenues, that first major line is where the base rate for everybody and usage fees of all our water customers inside town and outside. That's where that revenue all goes. It's purely base rate plus usage of water customers. We have very good collection rate on water, so our interest and penalties are not very high. The next line below that is an all-encompassing, again, it's customer-based revenues, taps, connections, reconnections, any premium service requests that people might have. All of those are lumped together in that one line where we're projecting about 12,400 for the proposed year. Meter fees, I think this current fiscal year is where I broke that out from miscellaneous so that it had purely new meters. And so we're trending to about $20,000 in new meters this year. So that's new connections to the water system with an estimate for next year of about 19, judging by what I'm seeing will get connected by the end of this fiscal year versus next fiscal year. And then your water availability fees are those couple dozen or so people that maybe 34, I think was the last number, that are on wells, but they pay the base rate every month for water availability to their home because of fire protection. And so those are all your customer-based revenues. Beyond that, just other general revenues that go into this fund, of course, are interest on investments, which is like Brian and I's favorite term of point nothing right now, although it is going up a little bit, but it's not a huge amount of money in this fund. We did have through this fiscal year cell phone tower leases that were shared between the general fund and the water fund. Based on discussions at the general fund meeting, that's not projected in this fund for the proposed year. And then I have a small amount of miscellaneous budget in there. Sometimes Sunny gets scrap metal revenue for turning old things in. Not exactly sure what they are. Yeah. So there's some small amount of miscellaneous revenue. And then right now, as is in this budget you see right now, but we'll talk about it more later when Brian talks about potential rate differences, is a retained earnings being appropriated of $400,000 to cover the expenses, mostly capital on the bottom end. So that is the revenues for the water fund in a nutshell.
And that note on the water service, we budgeted 750 and we're at essential, she's estimating 803. That reflects that, probably reflects the increased usage that we briefed. Yes. Sunny said in our annual report. So hopefully we'll just keep trying from there. If you don't have any questions on revenue, okay.
I do. I know I'm in the minority, but I think it's unconscionable. Okay, we're taking cell phone money and not putting it towards it with our raised rates. That's unconscionable. I know I'm in the minority. As I said in the past, over and over again, that money wouldn't come in unless you had cell phone, unless you had water towers.
They'd be somewhere else, Clerk.
Doesn't, it's hiding money someplace to use it for something else that, in my judgment, my personal feeling is wrong. Absolutely wrong. You know, leave it at that. I can't vote for it with it the way it is. Just because we're short somewhere else and then we move money over because it's illegal when it's not necessarily correct. And that's, I feel strongly, you know, that's okay. I'm just letting you know now.
I'd just like to say, I kind of view the water enterprise fund as like a investor-owned public utility. And I think that the investors in this case are the town taxpayers. And so whether the money goes toward water fees or whether it goes toward the general budget, it's, in a sense, whether the money from the cell towers goes to either one of those purses, it's a dividend to the investors who own the water fund, one way or the other. It's a zero-sum game here. It goes back to the taxpayer investors, one way or the other. So that's just the way I view it.
That's okay.
Okay, John, I'm gonna, if that's it on the revenues, I'm gonna go over to the next page and move through the detail on the expenditures. And again, we have the subject matter expert here, Sonny. So we'll stop at each page. There's only 2 pages here compared to the general fund. But anyway, the salary reflects the pay adjustments that we discussed during the general fund last month. And that is those who have splits between water enterprise fund and general fund. It also reflects 50% of the salary of the planned FTE working at town hall as well. The sports center is a split between general fund, water enterprise fund. The travel and training is continued education for Travis. Sonny's heir apparent. Professional services, generally not significant, higher this year because that's what we paid the design for the capital project to replace the water main on the south side of the road from Willow east to Atlantic Beach. But in the year we're planning for, it goes back down to a normal amount. The water billing services reflect what we pay to Carteret Craven to do our billing. Audit and accounting is a split with general fund on our auditor, who of course has to audit all of our funds to include the water fund. The PD, fire department, police department coverage reimbursement reimburses the general fund for the security of the water system. I point this out each year. If you discount the beach, our water system is our dollar-wise is our most valuable asset. It's valued at more than this building or the other building. Hydrant testing reimburses fire department for the flushing and hydrant testing that the fire department does, which works to Sonny and the water company's benefit as a preventive maintenance step. The maintenance IT line for 22, the increase in 22-23 is addresses the security upgrades that I briefed at the general fund meeting. Supplies, chemicals, we have an increase of $5,000 this year. It's been stable in years past, but this is the first of several items where we're seeing the impact of inflation. Sonny, what were you telling me about the cost of chlorine?
60 cent in the last 5 months.
Yeah.
And the
Per gallon.
for the chlorine and 70 cent for the phosphate.
Yeah, they're the two cans that we treat our water with, chlorine and phosphate. The supply line is significant. In the supply lines, I have a packet in my office 2 inches thick of what Sunny is required to keep the system going. This isn't even the major end item type things we get. This is just the various supplies he gets on the water side. Example, Sunny, supplies?
Yeah, even like the parts.
Yeah.
We spent $5,000 just some parts for the valves to go to the wells.
Right.
And this year, replace those, had never been changed before. That's a bunch of money going right there.
It's significant. The building maintenance line is a split with the general fund for this building. On the maintenance lines, our maintenance for our tanks, we have a 8.5% increase to southern corrosion, couple $1,000. The maintenance wells for this coming year, we've increased it by $5,000. We're going to camera well number 4
And one,
and those of you who haven't seen it, that's an extensive operation where we bring in a crane. It's like John and Clerk you saw with that repair 6 months ago. We have to bring in a crane, pull the entire straw, if you will, out of the ground, check that as well as a submersible pump, then do a bunch of lab tests, then put it back in.
clean it out too, clean it and make sure that the straw is intact.
Right.
The breaches.
Yeah, after the maintenance, cleaning it and that, we have to put it back in, and then there's a mandated testing protocol Sunny has to go through as well. The maintenance pumps is really as required. And we had an issue with the one at Brock Basin this past year, so we want to be ready for it. The maintenance on mains, pretty significant inflationary increase there, $13,000, and that addresses repair parts, sleeves, all that business and
Boxes, meter boxes, valves, everything.
so we're going to go higher on that because what Sonny's telling us.
Break it down, that's what's bad about it.
This is where Sonny pointed out to me that the cost of PVC has gone up 600%. So, and the well house maintenance is as required, and that is normally things such, it's normally either electric or generator or occasionally HVAC. So it's not that structural part of the house, it's all the various parts that keep it powered up or cooled. Grounds maintenance addresses such at 6 sites that Sunny has to maintain. The vehicle maintenance line is for 1 vehicle. The maintenance agreement for generators addresses the 4 generators. We have 1 at each well. By the way, we have hopefully new ones coming in with the FEMA money. But anyway, we have an agreement with our generator.
We had an issue this year, but we were able to fix it. That was good.
Yeah, and issue and the one off of Mimosa that was down for several days. And the uniforms cover what Sonny's wearing now and his fellows wear all year.
That the uniform is all in water.
Okay.
Is that right? I mean, if 50% of the wages go, is that rational?
Yes, I don't have.
You see what I'm saying? I mean, in other words, if the claim on one end is that 50% of the wages are water, then shouldn't 50% of the uniforms be water? I'm just trying to be fair. We're not being consistent how we're assigning costs and revenues.
We can take a look at that, Clerk. We'll,
just for consistency.
yeah, and just to be clear, not all of the public works employees have 50% of their wages.
No, I know that, but I mean, all staff in here, I mean, 50% among a lot of the staff. I'm not saying all of it is.
Run through the percentages.
Just for consistency purposes, that's all.
Is this a different split than we've done before? Is this the same split that we've used?
It's the same since they started wearing those work shirts with the reflective.
I didn't notice that before.
But, so the board, Brian, myself, tax collector, planner, clerk, are 75% general fund, 25% water. Sunny is 40% general fund, 60% water. Travis just went to 50-50 because of all of the work he's doing in water. And then Eddie, part-time in water. And then the rest of Sunny's employees are just by timesheets.
But that's okay. Just to be consistent, so at some point it doesn't say how come this is being done there. That's all. Because public tends to do that across the board, mix and match, and it's not necessarily accurate, that's all. If we just look at it, that's all.
If I can just correct something that you said earlier, the professional services for the current year, that 15,000, that's for the consultant that's helping with the grant, Collier.
Right.
Sorry. Mentioned something about design of the main, but this is for Collier with the grant.
Okay.
Okay. Good, 15,000. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go on to the next phase then. Telephone line is a split. That's the landlines in the building. Electricity addresses the power at the well site, of course. The gas and the diesel addresses not only the vehicle, but a portion of the backhoes and all the generators at the well houses. We backed off a little bit on that compared to last year based off the usage number that you see where we're going to end up this year. The bond interest and principal are to pay down the water enterprise fund bond, of course. The postage, copiers, custodial, and refuse and recycle is split with the general fund as well. We've increased, right, no, of course, on all these splits, they're not 50-50, but they're proportional. But the refuse and recycle, you see an increase, and that's based off of what we expect we're going to see from waste removal this summer, given what's going on with inflation tendencies. So we'll see there. Permits and fees is what's paid to the state. You know, we have our system permitted, obviously. The cell tower lease is cell tower lease expense. This time will be borne entirely by the general fund for the reasons Julie spelled out. Lab analysis is as required. And again, lab testing generally after a maintenance issue, required lab testing. Fees and dues both go to the North Carolina Rural Water Association and the American Water Works Association. They're the two main associations Sunny works with. The workers' comp and the property liability insurances, you'll see an increase there, and they're due mainly to the salary adjustments. And both the emergency maintenance and the contingency is exactly what it sounds. That's a set aside for the unknown that we know we'll see in the water system. Pardon? Yeah. Well, we don't have enough of one of the other maintenance lines. So that's it on that, John. Before I go into capital outlay, if there's any questions on any of those expenses.
Is cell tower lease a cell tower or is it a water tower?
It's the cell tower that's on. It's the amount that's the amount that the town pays. Trinity Center or the cell tower that's built?
Because we added the cell tower, added the cell antennas to the water tower.
Right.
Yeah, so there wasn't a lease for the water tower, that was site.
Oh, there is a lease for it, but it's not under that. It's not on, I'm sorry, it's the lease to the Trinity Center for where the water tank is under a
That's
different.
okay, that's all right.
Yeah,
You see where I was
I
getting
see
at?
where you're going, yeah.
I just wanted to
No,
make sure.
it's somewhere else.
Yeah,
I don't know where.
consistency.
No, it's not. That's a cell tower lease expense.
I think it might be more appropriate to be cell antennas, at least. It's not a tower. It's a water tower with cell antennas on it. I know what it sounds like.
Yeah, cell. Yeah, I think cell is the key word, but we got to put it maybe in a clearer place.
What just
Yeah.
gets clear.
Emergency topic, like,
Robert?
What?
Ed?
Okay,
Ready to move on?
all right, I'm now on the Water Enterprise Capital Improvement Plan, which should look familiar, because we adopted this 10-year plan just several weeks ago from our normal 5-year planning factor. But the things that I'll brief off of this is specifically the year that we're planning, and then we'll talk about the larger projects. For FY 22-23, so I'm in that column. We have 25,000 planned for some well rehabs. We have $6,000 planned for some mobile work lights. And Robert, you were out there, and Clerk, you were out there too. You seen when we're out there in the dark. We don't want to rely on the fire guys because their pagers go off, they disappear. So Sonny's going to have his own mobile work light, and it'll be capable of operating off his vehicle.
yeah, they have a generator with it, so we can plug right in, just like AB has.
So we want to do that. We get that done this coming year. So you'll see Julie rolled over the road bores and water main replacement from the current fiscal year to next, the 155 and the 245. So just a quick reminder, Charlie, go to the next slide, but Mayor and Board, you have this cartoon in front of you. Might look familiar because we looked at it last year. I thought this was a little easier to understand than putting this on the water system digital map. But the project that we're looking at doing in 22-23 is the solid line that runs from Willow east to Atlantic Beach. We're going to have a 10-inch main, replace an 8-inch main, and road bores at 3 locations. And steps for that is being designed right now. As a matter of fact, John Wade's going to meet with Sonny and I hopefully next week and give us the draft set of plans, and then we're going to walk the ground and look at it. Then from Willow Road west to Pine Knoll Boulevard, this is a hodgepodge of lines. You remember this from last year, if you remember the brief. This is a hodgepodge of line connections that Sonny very much wants to replace with a 10-inch main that's going to connect what we're putting in this coming year.
All on the south side.
All on the south side of the road, correct. So I want to just remind you on that. Now, what I'm planning on budget-wise is, again, next year, next fiscal year, the one we're planning for, we're spending our money, which we have planned to do this year, but we're going to wait till after the summer. We're going to spend our money to do that Willow Road going east. And hopefully it will not come in at $400,000, but we felt we were being very careful a year ago. Now it turns out it may not be enough with everything going on. We'll see. But the mirror project in 23-24. The mirror project in 23-24, I'm going to apply in that fall round of DEQ, next round of grant funding. However, we can't count on that, and we shouldn't count on it. So when we get to the water rate adjustments, I want you to remember that project. That Pineville Boulevard to the south, to Atlantic Beach, that replacement, Sonny says is fairly important.
If I could, just to make sure I understand, what benefit are we getting going from the 8-inch to the 10-inch? In other words, this isn't just a nice to have.
That's enough fire flow for the fire load that Chief Jason has. The shutters caught on fire a couple years ago, and we need at least 12 to 1,500 gallons a minute to fight it with. And that main going from 6 to 8 to 4, that's uncovered. We can actually have, say conditions for the firemen, really, and the lines keep breaking anyway. So let's kill two birds with one stone.
Our most frequent large main major leak issues is this. Well,
And we have that. Okay, we've had neighbors.
Yes, we have. It's done. It's terrible.
And then in the out years, and now getting into repeat of what we talked about when we approved the 10-year plan, in the out years, very large dollar amounts, I realized, but I needed to and wanted to reflect what's in the grant application. Just again, we're going to, grant applications due this coming Monday. It's done essentially, except for this resolution, which Charlie is going to send right after the meeting. But in the out years, we have programmed precisely the dollar amounts that are in that grant application right now. I anticipate that we'll be adjusting this when we get the results, both this July and maybe in October as well. So, I'll be happy with Sonny's help to talk about any of the information on the left-hand side, because he's the subject matter expert in any of that, but that's really what I have right now for the capital plan.
So this $15 million in fiscal year 23 to 26, through 26. Once that is done, then we kind of go back to normal for maybe a decade.
I think what will likely happen is, again, we're going to get offered some smaller amount, probably in a mix of grant or loan applications. And we're going to have to sit down, maybe a double committee meeting, Public Works Committee and Finance Committee, and prioritize all the segments of that grant application with the funding we have. And then determine what we'll accept for grants and loans.
What do we owe on the overall for the loan for purchasing the system?
It's just a little over 2 million. And so I think we would now be paying, what was it, 90,000 principal. The principal adjusts every year, it's not flat. So,
Right.
The payoff date anticipated.
we were sitting at, well, I'd have to check now that we're going to
That's
stop
fine.
paying it off. I mean,
I think we're up around 33 or
I
something.
think it was 2032, maybe 2033. Originally it was 2045, so we cut it by 13.
That's one of the things about the cell tower money. I know people want to hear it, but that's one of the things about that. I was paying it off early. Yeah, I was going to paying off.
In the December, I was going to say, I mean, when you have an inflationary period like we have right now, if you can stretch your debts out, it pays to do so, especially if they're low interest.
It's looking like 2041 without paying more down, 2041.
John, that's all I have on CIP. I'm ready to roll into fee adjustment discussion.
Any further discussions on that? I mean, these are, this next 3 years will be the largest single expenses we've ever had since we bought the water fund, right? And we've owned the water fund now for almost 15 years.
16
years.
17 years. Bullet, no
So,
problem.
I mean, inevitable, we had to do it sooner or later. Yeah,
Especially if the pipes are failing, you have no choice. I mean, we don't have.
right.
So, you know, on the, just before we leave capital planning, one of the things we needed for the grant was verification of age. And so Sonny was going to the state looking for all the permits. I went to Carolina Water saying, hey, you know, what do you have? And I started here and I got through all these. I finally got to a guy who essentially said, I've got nothing for you. I don't have any plans of installation of your water system in 1969. He said, but if you want to sell it to us, let us know. Which I thought was ironic because we bought it from them. So, so anyway, I'll move on to the discussion on usage and base rate adjustments. I'm talking off of this now. You should have a copy of this. And I'll quickly go through this first page because I think most of your questions will be on the page. But so we're all on the same level. Apologies for anyone at the finance committee meeting. A little bit of repeat here, but we have usage rates and base rates. Our usage rates have been tiered since 2010. They're higher for out-of-town customers than in-town folks. And generally, usage rates addresses annual operating expenses. Our base rate is a fixed amount, and it addresses debt service and depreciation. And if it's set right, can help you fund capital projects. And that split I'm describing of what usage rates and base rates does is really policy. It's not audit driven. And it's more art than science and what you set that. But I think if you have that as framework, it helps you establish responsible rates. And this is generally served us well. Those numbers by fiscal year report the percentage of our water enterprise fund reserves, if you will. It's not called reserves, it's an enterprise fund, but so this current fiscal year, 21-22, we're actually not going to use that 365. We're going to slide that to next FY. So that 43% is going to be up around 100 to 105%, Julie says. But my point on this is, except for large capital projects, our water enterprise fund reserves have generally been pretty stable and healthy. The usage rates, talk about them for a minute. Our operational expenses this year come in at 652. This is an increase of $100,000 from last year. We've talked about the inflationary factors already. So we are going to recommend some usage rate adjustments, and I'm going to flip that over to Julie in a minute to talk what those are. She set up the tiers 12 years ago and actually set up the adjustments as well. On the base rate adjustments, I want to point out that our debt service this year, again, principal and interest comes in at 177. Our audited depreciation level, of course, this is an indirect expense, but the depreciation amount just in one fiscal year was $164,000. Julie and I are discussing for consideration for this art, not a science, moving some known fixed cost annual expenses to our base rate planning column, if you will. But we will recommend some base rate adjustments. Just a reminder, we haven't had any adjustments in 12 years. And, before Joey talks percentages or anything, please also mention what you believe the annual increase would be to our highest.
Well, are these things here like audit, postage, copier, telephone, and those are all the things you're thinking of adding to the base rate? Or is that what's in the base, that's what you're thinking of adding?
Because they're largely fixed.
Right.
They're largely fixed costs.
Right.
They don't fluctuate with consumption. So.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Before we move on?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so on your second page, you have, in the far left column, you have what our current base charges and usage rate tiers are for inside town and outside of town. So we do have customers outside our city limits in both Atlantic Beach and Indian Beach. So those customers' charges are 1.5 times the inside rate for residents of Final Shores compared to them. So if you look at the top, these are the various meter sizes, residential, multi-residential, or commercial with their corresponding base rate. And then your tiers are, usage tiers are at the bottom. And like Brian said, we changed rates in 2010. We had just a flat rate of $3.03 per 1,000 gallons for any usage back then. We kept that small monthly usage at that same rate when we made it tiered rate. And then we set up tiers with increased cost per 1,000 gallons as you use more water. In this proposed change of base rates and usage rate tiers, I have adjusted that up to a level that then start to cover those base charges of depreciation and the kind of fixed admin costs, your debt, all covered by the base charge. And then more of your operational expenses that kind of fluctuate with demand on the system are covered more with your user rates. And so that's what you see in front of you is what the from and the to that we're proposing. And then I'm going to pass out some additional pieces of information unless we stop for questions on this page.
Just what was that dollar amount?
Oh, sorry. I'll call it your average Final Shores resident who is, our 5/8 meter residential home, their water bill would go up by $86 in an annual year. So $86 for a 12-month period based on the average annual usage of that home.
And our most frequent customer? Not frequent.
Well, and that's where our majority of our customers are that.
Did you figure out a percentage on that?
It's 30%.
Thank you.
So I'm going to pass out some free sheets of paper. Do this.
While she's passing these out, these came up during discussion in the finance committee, and Julie did a good job putting this together. Alicia, you sent it to me, but I didn't.
I sent Brad.
I'll look at it.
Sorry about that. Pass down to John and Clerk.
Thank you.
And I just sent Brad this electronically too.
Okay.
So the first page looks at, if you just look at your base rates, your usage rates, and other operating revenues, current course and speed, if we do nothing to our rates. And then we have our planned capital in the next 2 years. We can't assume that we're going to receive a grant for that second part of that line along Highway 58. You can see in 22-23, we have a net loss of $400,000 and our cash goes down from roughly about 100% of annual expenses to less than 40%. And in the following year, it gets even worse because we have another capital project that we would get a grant for. That's of high need, and that will bring us down even lower. And then in 25 and 26, even though there are no dollar figures in that capital outlay section, that doesn't mean we don't have a need to do them. We just haven't identified them yet because of this large grant application.
Those are the $5 million numbers.
Yeah, well, we're not going to put $5 million. We don't have part failure.
Nothing matters after.
Yeah.
A specific date.
So then if you go to the next page, if we adjust rates as proposed, which is the following page, then as you can see, we in 22, 23, we're still dipping into reserves a little bit, but not by 400,000. We're dipping in by 175. And then doing that next capital project, we're dipping in a little over 200. But we're not in danger territory like we are on the nothing page.
And that might look a little alarming, but to me, that's the moral equivalent of like, that's to do these things internally, okay? And to me, it's kind of like the moral equivalent of went down substantially for the AMRs in 2016.
Yeah.
And if you notice, we climbed back up to 94%. And this, of course, is absent all that super high dollar business we have.
So then your third page looks very similar to the front page of your budget, but I've added little titles to the last two columns where it has without a rate increase, what that budget looks like, which is exactly the same as the first page. We're using 400,000 of reserves. And we would have a net loss, like I said, on the do nothing page. Or with the proposed rate changes, we're then only using 175 of our retained earnings to cover that capital expense in 22, 23. So that just shows you what that last column proposed budget difference would look like with the rate adjustment. And one of the things I had mentioned to Robert the other day, and I confirmed with, Chapel Hill's Environmental Finance Center, which is the School of Government's Environmental Finance Center for all things utility related. They offer free assistance to utilities with less than 3,000 customers for a wide variety of things. So I emailed them today to see, I said, we're proposing a rate increase, but we want to delve into some of these usage numbers, these tiers a little bit more to look at, do we need to shift those usage numbers? Because maybe, 12 years has passed. Maybe those need to change, or maybe we need to jump a little more as far as the usage rate goes. And he said he asked me for availability the first week of May to start talking about it. Which I told them, it's not something that we need to do right now. We just want to look at it in the future to possibly adjust those tiers. And it is no cost to the town because they receive EPA money to assist small systems. So it wouldn't cost us anything.
And we pay dues.
And we pay dues to school government, yeah.
Could we adjust tiers anytime during the year without having to go through a whole major budget process?
Yeah, you would do a budget amendment for the realized revenue, but.
So, I mean, if we start off with the tiers we have now, and then, let's say 6 months from now, after you've had this go around with the group and they made some recommendations, we could make that adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, and you all might find this a bit surprising coming from me. My question is it enough? Are the adjustments that we're making enough? And for whatever reasons, I assume all good reasons, over the last 10 years, we haven't adjusted them. We're making a fairly substantial adjustment now. But I think unlike other parts of our overall budget, which in my view, there's some level of flexibility in terms of choices that we make. I don't view that as being quite the same in the water side of things. You have a product, you have an infrastructure which supports it, and you need to be paying your way. You don't want to be overpaying it, but I guess all of that to say, I don't have an issue with what's being proposed. Because I don't think we really have much choice, but I think it's the right thing to do to ask for help to see, are there areas that, because we took the best guess we possibly could way back when you set this up, there may be other ways for them to help us determine what the best rate is for those particular tiers than what we're using now. So my expectation would be that if we did it during the year, it's probably going to go up again. Now, it may not go up much, but I think it ought to go up enough to cover what our expenses are.
And it may go up for just some tiers.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And I wanted to make sure, Clark, I thought that was a good point that you brought up Monday. What we had talked about with this, what's turned into this study is maybe we're going to find that those at the higher tiers are using a lot more percentage of our total usage that we kind of assumed, and therefore doing more wear and tear on our system and causing more pumping and all. And therefore, maybe it's 30% for everyone else, only 86 hours a year, and more than that for others. That's why it has merit, you know.
Trying to deal with conservation and all, those that are using water way beyond essentials probably should be paying for that more than the people that are using it for essential.
Like irrigating?
I wasn't going to use the word.
I didn't say that.
Vince Larson used to get so mad when he drove by a house with the sprinklers on in the rain. He could call me.
I'm gonna just put a rain sensor.
It makes no difference on what people use water for. You know, they buy water and they use it for whatever.
Yeah, we were talking about that issue, Clerk, and my observation, hearing Sonny for all these years, those people putting in the 1-inch service lines for irrigation are probably not in a position where they're going to take issue with paying a higher usage rate.
No, but looking at it just from a conservation standpoint, I think there is an issue involved. No matter how much money someone has, throw it away, you should probably pay more than if you don't throw it away.
We have a rate, a usage rate tier that charges more for higher users.
It was very difficult.
Relative, yeah. I mean,
We're going to think worthwhile looking at. That's all.
Yeah, what I see this study that Robert and Julie kind of, came up with is, it's not only that, I'd like to see if we can find out what percentage of our total usage those higher use, to see if we can make a determination that it's fair that we can state that, man, those folks are putting a higher percentage wear and tear on their system.
I was also going to say about the, is it enough? One of the things, so I have some growth projected in the usage numbers going forward, but we have so much building going on that I don't have any idea how much water those places are going to use. So we probably, just by growth in those homes getting CO'd and coming onto the system, that's why I think even though we could adjust it in the middle of the fiscal year, I think I'd rather see these homes get CO'd and get online to see what their usage is, to get a little more data behind it.
It'd be interesting to make an estimate based upon
The biggest,
what happens through
Yes.
what's been
the
closed.
biggest change are gonna be all these young families with a couple hundred kids in town now. That's gonna be probably a bigger use, because if you got 200 kids times a shower, 365 days a year, that's a lot of water.
Well, I
That's
can
a lot of
tell you, if
assumption.
you have,
But it's about what it is.
well, I was gonna say, I can tell you.
You might not take a shower every day.
I can tell you from personal experience, boys use less water than teenage
Well,
girls.
we know that. Yes, that's true. That's definitely true.
We don't need to get bogged down in this now, and we certainly don't need.
But it's something to look at going
Well,
forward.
no, I was going to bring up a different issue. We don't need to get bogged down in the number of homes or number of lots yet to be developed. But I would offer that we may want to, in the coming year, and perhaps we look at it at the retreat, whatever the number of homes or properties we still believe we have to be developed. What sort of an impact, if any, will that impose on our water system in the next 5 to 10 years, or whatever our expectation is for when that build out completes? And maybe it's not significant, but it would be nice to know that it's not significant, or if it is significant, then to the best that we can project what that impact might be.
And I guess you'd probably have, what is the home, Kevin tells me, where the home, like on Oak Leaf, right where they're tearing down the home to rebuild a new one, a bigger, but so we have those vacant properties, which I think we have a really good number of that based off of the house count for the solid waste contractor. But then it's these issues of
That house is already going up, so you can compare it to this year.
somebody's gonna, yeah, right.
Well, and Sonny, your tenant's main will take care, would they take care of any expected growth we're likely to see? I mean, if we built out the whole town.
Not only that, but once we also have an issue with the water tank, that's going to help us too. We talked earlier about that.
Yeah, I guess my thought is, as opposed to just making an assumption, it would be good to have something that actually tells us that's the case.
If I can throw out
You're right, Mayor, it will help us.
something I mentioned at the offsite. But, you know, the federal census took place here, the census people, you don't know when 90% of people did it online, but I'm told that census people were in town in March and April of 2020. I have no confidence whatsoever that that census reflects what COVID did in final scores in terms of our demographics. You know, if we have the opportunity, I mention this only because this also could talk about the impact on water enterprise fund. If we have the opportunity to find out how exactly a municipality of our size does a municipal census, I don't mean Charlie with Survey Monkeys. I don't mean, people coming. I mean significant enough that we find out how many people are living in their ages, their home occupations or not, kids enrolled in school. That's something I think we'd be capable of doing that would really help out with this kind of stuff.
You've heard me talk about it. It is critical. We haven't got a clue what we're planning for with all these changes.
And knowing one of those census takers rather than, well,
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't trust the accuracy of federal census during 2021.
Well, yeah.
Not much at all.
I'm going to get away from arm's length and jewelry, but if we waived usage fee for 1 month, and if we offered if we could find a way to incentivize it, then that would be financial. But if we could find a way to incentivize people to participate, I just think that would be so useful for our discussion. I mean, I don't know about you gentlemen, but I could not believe it when I saw the number that we had more school kids in K through 8 than Atlantic Beach.
Well, something that you might want to think about is with the 50th coming up, is that one way to try to garner participation? What comes to mind is we had a whole bunch of people chasing around these Mad Max trucks after Florence, primarily volunteers, and I think it was primarily maybe the CERT team. But I think for something like this, that they can really see how it's going to impact, or that it will impact them in a more relevant way than what, and I'm not denigrating the federal census, but this is something that their neighbors are helping with, and they can take more to the bank, the results of it. The 50th may not be something that you necessarily want to tie it to. You may want to do it before then, but you might want to also think about advertising it as we go towards our 50th year. Here's what we want to do over the next 6 months, starting in December or starting in January. Organize it between now and then, just as a.
Yeah, that's the way we'd have to do it. Really build public support for it.
Exactly.
Right. And communicate with them how it's going to help them.
Yeah.
And as a town, and then, even if we had like teams of volunteers going knocking on door to door, and then if nobody's home, send the team back again another day, or try to get a hold of the people and find out when they're going to be there. I mean, it would have to be real thorough to make it.
Yeah, to make it worthwhile. Yeah, it's got to be reasonable. It's got to be a lot more accurate than the federal census.
And I think you want to do it in the off season, in the school year. You want to do it, there's too much. You want to. Okay, good. If I hear, I'm kind of excited about doing something like that. I'll throw a meeting together with some volunteers and see what sticks to the wall. Who is the person that you know was a census worker? Mark?
I'll tell you later.
Not going to talk. We're not talking about that.
Yeah, I need that.
Did CERT at one point have a system of lock captain? They had everybody with a certain number of people that they were responsible for.
I don't know if they ever got that.
I don't know where that ever went, but I know that at one point
they were talking about.
Yeah, I don't know if that ever materialized. That's a good while ago.
Oh, yeah. Get somebody on each street to kind of have volunteers.
Sort of like we did with the coyote thing, maybe.
Somebody on each street who knows, their neighbors, and then they could track down the ones who are second homeowners.
In fact, that coyote thing might work, Brian, if you think about it. We had coyote captains or whatever we call those everywhere. We never saw any coyotes then.
Yeah.
But something like that might work.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But we'll make it as simple as you can. If we don't want to complicate this.
Okay, on the Water Enterprise Fund, are there any questions, or, are we give Brian and Julie direction tonight to go ahead with what's proposed?
I think echoing what Robert said, it's what we got to do.
Well, I think for me, it's a yes, but there's a yes, but. And
is it big enough?
Well, no, it's actually, and I don't want to get into an emotional or a hot button issue here, but I am sympathetic to Clark's concern about the cell tower piece. And one way perhaps that we might address it, if you all feel it's worth doing, is simply convene the finance committee and have this discussion, just kind of have it out. Let's talk through it. And I think we need to come to a decision on how we're going to do it. I mean, we're deciding that we're doing it based on what's being proposed, but I think you have a commissioner who has a significant enough concern that it ought to be run to ground. And we may not be able to do that in the finance committee, but I think it it deserves that level of concern and discussion. But
I've got no problem with that, but when we talked about the general fund, we kind of slapped the table on putting the cell tower
At least for this year.
in there for that this year. When we were in our budget meeting talking about the general fund.
And
But if you want
if we have that discussion, it's got to be the whole commission, all the commissioners, not just finance.
to, yeah,
I was going to suggest if it's at the May 11th meeting, we're going to have all of the pieces of the budget together as a family. We've only seen them independent of each other. We'll have the latest draft of the budget all together, and that will be an agenda item. I would think that would be something then to have the whole board discuss in then,
Good idea.
That would be
You know.
fine with that.
you know?
My only concern is that I don't, and let's discuss it there. I don't want it to be a hot button issue either. But I just hate to see when public pushes it back and forth, but when it's convenient versus based on, that's all. We had a problem with that for 10 years, so it's nothing new,
Yeah.
not this year. But it's gone to 100%, then
but it
it's
is,
not what I predicted 10 years ago, so that's what bothers me.
yeah, I mean, it's a zero-sum game. The money is returned to our taxpayers in one form or another. Just whether it comes through water rates or whether it comes through your tax rate.
Julie's got a reasonable solution to that
I would
discussion.
suggest it's not that simple, but that's okay.
The $86, annual increase in the average water fee is, well, I guess that would be the equivalent of about a little more than a penny and a half if you were talking about a tax increase of $86 for a $500,000, a home with a $500,000 assessed value.
That's about right.
For 100.
Yeah.
Pardon?
For 100.
Right, per $100 of assessed value. So, it's going to be the same one way or the other. You get in your water rate or you get in your tax rate. Yeah.
But your enterprise fund has to operate on its own.
Right,
Yeah.
that's right.
I mean, you can subsidize it, but you don't necessarily want to be doing it. You don't
That
want.
wasn't the reason I have it. The subside.
I mean, I agree.
No, I'm just saying that an enterprise fund, he was saying, so you have taxes over here. I'm just saying your enterprise fund has to be subsidized. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we run the water enterprise fund as if it's an investor-owned public utility. We have a fiduciary responsibility to raise rates because we're obviously in the red otherwise.
Yeah, Clerk, they just, because we're discussing it now, I'll say this on the 11th. I know your position, I've heard it for a decade, and I respect your position, but the business of the water enterprise fund, the production of water and the sale of water, okay, and the capital planning, the business, cell phone revenue has nothing to do with the business.
I've heard that argument too, except if you didn't have the water tower, you wouldn't have the cell phone revenue. Because they're not cell phone towers. They're water towers that were built by 1.5 million or whoever built the water tower. It's an honest difference of opinion. So
We have more cell towers like the one on the golf course. Yeah.
only put up mountain zone.
Well, we can put it on top of the PSB and triple the salaries of the firemen.
Oh, yeah, that's where
Okay.
we'll go.
So is that, are we going to have, then let's moving along, are we going to have a finance committee meeting or are we going to discuss it?
We've got to go. the whole
Doesn't
committee.
sound like it.
Okay, let's do it then, as suggested on the.
I want to reserve the right, I like having finance committee meetings prior to board meetings. I'm getting away again. If we can be good, they're good prep for us mentally, quite
Right.
frankly. And, a couple of you guys come, so maybe we will. It depends on what we can find out. We need to talk to you. We have some more to do from the Environmental Plans Committee. And I'm leaving for Oklahoma.
I mean, my only issue is we kind of made it when we talked about the general fund. At
It
that time,
seemed
and all
that
the
way.
commissioners were
So
there,
I don't, but
but no, wasn't a vote, I guess.
No, but I think that was the general feeling, John.
All right. In that case, I'm going to move on. Charlie, do we have any public comments?
Don't see any, but there are a couple people online. If they do, they can raise their hand.
How many people are online now?
Board.
Can you tell us who they are?
Brad Rich, Christine Voss, Jimmy Beckham, and Yolanda Lozano. I know Larry had a comment. He would,
No, he
Okay,
didn't.
Larry.
No, he didn't.
3 areas.
Identify yourself, give your address. You can stay right where you are and you have 3 minutes.
Larry Priscilla, 139 Loblolly Drive. On the issue of the maintenance on the beach accesses, I just wanted to suggest, if you don't do it already, the ones that are wood, do we coat them? Do we stain them? Do we seal them? Do we do anything to them? I've seen lots of advertisements that claim they'll come out and spray them a certain way and guarantee them for a lifetime. I don't know, just something we might want to look, I doubt it, I don't believe it, but just something you might want to look at if you're not building it as composite. I assume A is not going to be composite. Yeah, it's big wood. Yeah, because it's 3 times more expensive for the composite. But anyway, just a thought from a maintenance cost. On the,
Sealant, that sounds good.
pardon?
Sealant sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know how good it is. I just seen it advertised. But even if that one isn't that good, we might want to consider there are relatively good sealants. Thompson's is not a good one, but there are relatively good sealants that you can put on there that'll get you a year or 2 and may save us from having to replace the boards sooner than later. That's right. The other item is on the growth and water usage. A year or 2 ago, on almost a back of an envelope, I guess I'll say, we took a look at that, and we could double our water usage and still be plenty good with our capacity in our system. But again, I agree, it should be looked at again. And at that time, we have more lots empty than we do now. But we met all the state's requirements for how much of your reserves you need to have and all that. And we were in very good shape then, a couple of years ago. So we may have to change that. I don't know.
Can you find that envelope?
I can. On the water, on the good old cell tower issue, the situation you have right now is you're either going to put half of it in the cell tower and then not have to raise the usage rates 30%, but maybe some lesser number. But then since you took it out of the general fund, which we already sort of put it in, then you're going to have to raise taxes more there. So one way or the other, it's going to come out about the same. The issue of the water company put towers in, somebody came put cell towers on them, we'll make money off that, that ought to all go to the water company. If the cell tower wasn't there and the cell companies wanted to serve this area and that was the location, they'd do the same thing they did as a country club. They knock on your door, put up a tower and go forward.
That's right.
So you can't say just because the water tower's there, you made the money. You could have made the money, if that was the right area and they wanted to put the cell towers there, you would have made the money anyway.
Government has a way of switching things that are convenient for them rather than by principle. That's all.
This is like
That's all.
if this
Yes.
happened, then that might have, I mean,
Whatever.
it's all hypothetical.
I see what's on the wall.
It's a hypothesis, no more.
Yeah.
Any public comments? Okay. Anybody else?
To adjourn.
You finished, Larry?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, before we adjourn, I'm just going to give everybody one more chance.
No.
No, in that case, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So we should do adjourn.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. We had a very productive meeting tonight. Thank you, Julie and Brian.
I think my clock stopped.
And
It's already 20 to 8.
Thank you, Mayor.
Larry,
You better ring the bell before you walk in.
It's exactly right. Thank you. I can go out for a couple of hours.
Put her shotgun away.
Get home this early, but I want to appreciate it too.
I didn't get your last.
You are at the level.
You gotta freak out, man.
Good meeting you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Hey,
Nice to meet you.
Good to see you guys.
I think there's the numbers right there.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the midst of a budget discussion, and, you know.
Anyway.